Welcome to our show, Holding Ground. My name is Laura Richer. I'm a psychotherapist and the owner of Anchor Light Therapy Collective in Seattle, Washington. Each week, I'm joined by another therapist from the Anchor Light team to tackle important topics in mental health and psychotherapy. Our goal is to promote well-being by normalizing mental health challenges. We are here holding ground for you every Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. on KKNW.
Welcome to Holding Ground. I'm Michelle Mooney, a licensed therapist at Anchor Light Therapy Collective in Seattle, Washington. We are here live every Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. on 11:50 a.m. KKNW Talk Radio. You can also stream us anytime on the KKNW website or any podcast platform. You can also check out our episodes on our YouTube channel as well. So we're so excited to be back again. Each week we are bringing you fresh topics, exciting guests, and co-hosts. So today I'm here with one of our other licensed therapists at Anchor Light Therapy Collective. She's a couples therapist, EMDR, and so much more. Brenda Gill, welcome back to Holding Ground.
Thank you, Michelle. It's exciting to be back and talk about a fresh topic. We hope that our listeners are excited about this today. And so, yes, as you mentioned, please check us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn even. And if you like what you hear, please do schedule a complimentary consultation with one of our licensed therapists at anchorlighttherapy.com/get started.
Great, thank you. So Brenda, today we're going to talk about a question I think a lot of our clients and people in general can kind of get tripped up on, and that's, how do I know the difference between, am I dating a person, are we in a relationship, and how to define the distinction between the two of those, right? Do we have a label yet? Do we not have a label yet? So Brenda, can you get us started on how we start to piece this apart, how we break this down?
Right, absolutely. So as you mentioned, there can be some gray area. We want to consider also diversity and personality and things like that. So we'll do our best to address that as well. But we want to identify some of the factors and how they differ between dating relationships and long-term committed relationships. This can hopefully help you identify where you're at right now, maybe what you're looking for, and what it would look like to move on to the next stage. So first, I just want to touch on some of the benefits of dating and long-term committed relationships. So for dating, the benefit is that maybe you don't have a long-term goal. You're focused more on companionship, having fun. You don't really need to be vulnerable with that person just yet. However, you may sacrifice your ability to really be your true self when you're dating someone. However, it's nice to have a companion, right? And again, maybe expectations are low. You're just getting to know each other and exploring your compatibility. So those are some benefits. On the other hand, benefits of long-term committed relationships might look like, okay, well, maybe now I've got a partner in crime, right? How do we start to align our lives, move towards that shared future? You now have greater consideration for the other. Maybe you're more comfortable in your ability to be vulnerable and being yourself in the relationship. And now your expectations are going to look more like maintaining the relationship, trying to align your different personalities, and getting a better understanding of your individual experiences in order to strengthen your relationship. So we're going to go into more depth of some of these factors and really outlining some of the differences within that dating and long-term committed relationship.
Yeah, so the first thing we're going to talk about is how we spend time together in these different contexts. So dating, it looks a lot like very intentional, planned out dates, right? We tend to be a little bit more formalized. Some people can feel like this phase is almost a little bit like an interview or an audition, right? Some people feel like dating is quite awkward. Some people really love it. It's definitely a different experience. It's a very vulnerable experience to be dating. And in terms of spending time together, you spend a lot more time apart than you do together at this phase, right? So we might go out every Friday night, but we're not spending our whole entire weekends together. And as we move into the relationship phase, we do start to spend more time together, and we start to do more casual, mundane things, right? So that can look like laying around in our pajamas all day on a Sunday. That can look like, hey, can you help me go to the hardware store, right? I need to run by the post office, things like that are day-to-day things we're starting to integrate more with our the time that we're spending together, because we are spending more time together and we still have to maintain our lives outside of that, right? So not as much of that, I'm trying to impress you with a fancy dinner or a fun concert, right? So that's really what that looks like, the distinction between the two there.
Exactly, Michelle. And also expectations is something to consider. So when you're dating, maybe your expectations revolve more on just, planning the next date. Maybe your focus is more on the present again, right? Just maybe you're not thinking about, where are we going to be at within the next 3 years or 5 years, maybe even the next year or even less than that, right? You're really focused on the present. The expectation is really just to get to know each other. And at this point, maybe it might be important to consider how much of a role each other plays when interacting with friends and family or other social groups, right? Especially right now with the holidays coming up, right? This might be something to explore either independently or together in a conversation to figure out, what does it mean to each of you to get invited over to family gatherings, right? Because people could have different definitions for that. For some people, it might just be, hey, I think you're really cool. Come meet my friends, come meet my family. Whereas for others, maybe that means like, oh, wow, this is serious, right? We're getting to that point. And so it might be helpful to talk about some of those expectations around this time of the year if you are in a dating relationship with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one, right? Do I bring my partner? Does my partner even want to go? How much pressure does it feel like for your partner to meet mom and dad and grandma, right? So like you're saying, talking about these things.
Yeah. And even, even if it weren't the holidays coming up, it's still important to talk about the personal expectations that you have. Maybe as you start dating, you don't have any yet. Maybe you're still, that's part of your dating process is figuring out what to expect. But it's always, as you start to build that picture for yourself, do talk to the other person in order to avoid confusion about your intentions, or especially if you have desires to continue dating other people while you're dating them as well.
Right. So then with the relationship expectations, again, we constantly want to check in about these things. And like Brenda's saying, do it early on, right? Because we're hopping into a relationship where my expectation is I'm in a committed relationship. We're going to build a family, right? We're going to move to North Dakota. And then I find out you don't even want to have kids or get married, right? Then we kind of missed something there. We're not checking in as much, right? So if your expectations don't match on that level of the next step in that commitment, pay attention to that. This phase can look like, okay, I'm starting to tell my friends and family about this person, right? Some people hold off until they know, like, this is of substance, right? I don't want to tell mom and then she's going to nag me all the time about my new girlfriend if I don't even know if I want to be with her yet. So, what it looks like for the two of you to be in a serious relationship. Do we want to be monogamous? Do we want to have an open relationship? Again, the level of commitment and discussions around that. And then the planning future together piece, right? Are we going to go on vacation next summer? Are we going to move in together? What does that timeline look like for you? And again, I've seen couples in my work with couples, Brenda, where people don't talk about these things until, one person's about to dump their lease and thinking they're going to buy a new place together, and the other person has no intention of ever living with anyone ever again. So again, we really need to talk about these things. So the next thing we need to talk about is the level of commitment and how exclusive we are.
Exactly. So as I mentioned earlier, when dating, you may be dating multiple people at the same time. So you may not be exclusive at this point. And again, that's a point where it might be important to share that, right? And it's perfectly okay to date multiple people at the same time. We do want to normalize that. Just to be fair, it would be helpful to talk to the people that you're dating and letting them know, right? And to make sure that that's clear to them. Again, so a factor that plays into exclusivity is that you're maybe focusing again on short term, right? So commitment might be low, right? Maybe you're again just trying to learn more about yourself or about the other person. Maybe you're still trying to figure out if there is potential for further commitment at this stage, trying to figure out if you can develop that sincere love for the person. And again, commitment might be low in the first few months or first few weeks as you're starting to get to know each other. So some examples of what I've seen in my work is that some people tend to get maybe intentionally or unintentionally get stuck in the dating stage because of past trauma that they've been through, maybe past unhealthy relationships, maybe they're going through recovery and they want to take their time easing into a committed relationship. Maybe they're trying to make sure that they can manage potential triggers. But other things that can happen too is that maybe you just have a history of always getting stuck in this dating relationship and you're not sure how to move forward. forward. So
Mhm.
we'll speak to that in a little bit more in a few minutes here. But another example I'd like to share is for some people that are trying to recover from past trauma or past unhealthy relationships, they found it helpful to journal as they're starting to date, to kind of check in with their emotions and making sure that they're choosing that person from a sincere place of love and care for the individual, rather than maybe trying to fill some type of void, right? We hear about those
Mhm.
serial daters.
Mhm.
And so journaling, kind of checking in, and maybe talking to a therapist could be helpful to help you navigate this dating stage if you have a history of these negative patterns or negative experiences in relationships.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely see that a lot. The fear piece based on, like you're saying, past trauma, whether it's from childhood or prior relationships, can keep people in that dating phase because that feels safer than opening themselves up
Mhm.
entirely to another person. So they want commitment, but they want that connection, but at arm's length, because that's where it feels the most safe. So
Mhm.
this is a really good place to check in with your motivations for yourself by staying in either phase or moving into either phase. So am I staying in dating phase out of fear and maybe missing a genuine opportunity, but I'm so frozen that I don't know what to do? So that's a great thing to talk to your therapist about. Or am I rushing into the exclusive stage because, gosh, I want to make sure I lock this person down, right? So let's start really doing almost kind of like forced exclusive things in a relationship. Let's start talking about moving in together on the third date, that kind of thing, right? We don't want to go that fast. So again, checking in with your motivations. But in a relationship, this is where people and other options become a lot less appealing, right? We want to only focus on the one person. Again, that constructing shared future piece, talking about what that looks like together. You start to have a lot more respect for the other person. What you both really bring to the table, you value that, you're willingly choosing to be in that relationship despite the risk, despite that vulnerability piece, because we know that does have payoff, right? But getting over that hump can be the really scary part. We start to open up more. We start to share more of our story. We have less anxiety around if I show this person my true colors, right? What I look like in my pajamas on Sundays, but also how I handle, traffic and, things like that, how I manage my finances, all those things we start to really show more of ourselves, and we don't fear it as much because we have a level of trust at this point. What it means to share our lives together. Do we want marriage? Do we want just a lifelong partnership? Do we not want really any labels at all? We just want to maintain a really committed level of companionship. And really talking about, again, what are your feelings around the relationship and the meaning of the relationship at this stage, checking in on those feelings, right? Is this working for you, right? Do we want to make some next steps? Don't just assume. That's where all of this becomes really tricky.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, look at the relationship as this third entity that you're both creating, right? And this is, speaking in relationships that work as a dyad, right? But, that it's this third entity that you want to maintain, right? And so it's important to consider these two perspectives, right? What is it that you want, the expectations? What is it that you're looking for, considering your personal goals and all of that, to construct something new together? So exactly, all that you're sharing, Michelle, definitely speaks to that. Yeah. So the next factor here that we want to share is prioritization. So making your partner a priority. So when you're dating, maybe in short, they're likely not a priority at this point, right? So you're focusing more on your independent needs rather than the relationship or your partner's needs. So this might mean you prioritize family, friends, or career, or maybe even other things above your partner. And so it's going to feel like there's maybe a larger proportion of me rather than we at this stage. So this might also, I've worked with clients that talk about accountability. And so sometimes when you're in a dating stage or getting stuck here, it's going to feel like maybe there's some discomfort around being accountable to another person, right? So we like that independence of being able to hang out with whoever we want, or, if a potential job offer comes up that includes a move, then we're more likely to jump on it, right? Because we're not thinking so much about the other partner and their needs and how this might impact them. And so some people really like that, and that can be something that keeps them kind of stuck in this dating stage, even if they'd like to move forward into a committed relationship. And then in addition, so, also thinking about people that are just looking for a connection, right? Maybe they're not looking to build a life together with that person. And so that's going to impact the amount of prioritization that they can offer the other person, and also just personality differences, right? So if maybe a person doesn't want to be too close, right? Maybe they don't want to be too vulnerable, and maybe maybe their desire for availability is a little bit lower, then that's also going to impact the amount that they can prioritize the other person.
Right. And again, as we keep saying, talking about these things, because this is where hurt feelings can really show up the most, right? Well, why are you spending so much time with other people and not me? If we're not clear about what we're both expecting at this stage, there will be an opportunity for hurt feelings. So as we move into relationships, how we prioritize one another, we always want to make sure that the person we're dating adds to our life, but is not our life, right? So we want to still prioritize career, friends, family, but it will be to a lesser percentage than how much time we're spending with our partner, how much time we're considering our partner and making plans together. So we start to do that more with our partner than other areas of our life. And again, not losing sight of those other things. This also looks like a lot more greater effort and patience and consideration as to who our partner is and how we integrate our lives together. So if we have drastically different work schedules, right, being open to that, working around that together. Okay, well, we do have 3 to 5 available every Wednesday. Let's try to meet for a late lunch or something like that, where, before it could have been, disc golf with your buddy, right? So still do that too. Disc golf is fun. But really understanding your partner's habits at this point, their preferences. So that's the piece in couples therapy we really try to focus on, is that building the love map. So that's essentially, Brenda, I'm dating you. This is my map to your inner world. This is your favorite thing for lunch. This is the thing you hate most on the planet. These are your best friends. These are the people that you don't respect, right? I know this about you. I want to know this about you. And we just tend to have a lot greater respect and consideration for our partner's needs. We're much more in tune with that. That's where we kind of can start to talk about love languages, but also overall, are your needs being met in the relationship? So that's how prioritization shows up at this point.
Exactly. And I do just want to add, we talk a lot in dating or prioritizing, planning the next date and all that, but date nights are still important in long-term committed relationships.
Don't stop that.
So making sure that you're, making time for that too, when possible, right? That's part of making your partner a priority, right? Again, and maybe it's Wednesday 3 to 5. That's what works for us. Great. And planning a date night, right? To show that you're both contributing effort into maintaining that relationship.
Yeah, both of you taking a turn with that, planning adventures, going on adventures, doing all these things that still enrich your relationship, but they're not as like that structured, formal, getting to know you phase. This is the fun part of sharing these dates and adventures together. So, all right. So Brenda, what about trust and emotional intimacy?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when dating, maybe there's not much pressure to be vulnerable here, right? Some people might say, right, I feel like maybe I'm performing, or I'm still a little bit anxious about showing my true self. Oh, what if they learn about this habit? And so maybe you can have a deep conversation again. So maybe it depends on personality. If you're really good at just being open and deep, like that may exist in the dating stage, but it might, not go as profound as it would within a long-term committed relationship. So at this stage, maybe the trust and the emotional intimacy just looks like enough to be able to get to know each other and figure out whether you're compatible. And then when it comes to trust, right, maybe at this point, you're not really sure how much you can rely on the other person, then they might not be your go-to at this stage. so far.
Right, exactly. And then we can, of course, when we get into a more committed relationship, we do cross that line. So that trust piece, right? Can I trust the person? Can I trust my partner with my most vulnerable pieces, right? The hard things that have happened to me in my life. So having a greater willingness to talk about these things that aren't as flashy and fun as we try to advertise when we're dating, right? But this can look like a hard childhood, or, how you dropped out of college, but what you've done to turn your life around and the meaning you make around those things. You mentioned sobriety earlier, Brenda, right? So what that was like for you, how did you get out of that place? How can I support you through these things? Things like that. Deeper conversations around all kinds of topics. So hopefully we align in a lot of things like our values, right? So that can look like politics and that sort of thing. So let's have a deep conversation about that and the meaning you have around certain policies and, whatever that looks like, historical things, whatever really you two like to talk about. Hopefully you do have deeper conversations at this time. Like you said, go-to person. So if I'm having a crappy day, is my instinct to text my mom, or now do I want to text my partner? And how much again am I integrating them in that? Can I depend on them for that emotional support? So hopefully at this point they're your go-to person. Again, creating plans for a shared future, just being really comfortable showing your entire true self, and just a greater investment in increasing emotional intimacy. So that's the intention, to create a deeper emotionally intimate relationship.
Exactly. And so, let's wrap up a little bit here. And so we've mentioned that there are some areas of overlap, right? So there are some gray areas. And again, this might depend on personality, your amount of openness and comfortability with just general vulnerability, the comfort that the other person provides when you're having those conversations, even within a dating relationship. So you might see some of that emotional intimacy coming out, especially as you're kind of starting to transition. Maybe you've been dating for a few months, closer to a year, right? And so you might start to see some of that overlap. I have had some experience with working with couples where maybe one individual is, still trying to figure themselves out. So they still kind of fall more within the dating category, whereas the other is really trying to build a family and is really into the person. And so sometimes what happens in these relationships, and for example, in that case, breakups might happen, right? As you're still trying to figure out, right, is this really the person that I want to be with, right? And so you might see some overlap where, okay, maybe you are living together because you've been trying to work this out for a while, right? But it might still feel like, I don't know if I can be completely vulnerable and express the things that are maybe getting in my way to really jumping into a greater commitment with this person. So, it's common, right? Those patterns of separation or breakups as you're trying to align what it is that you're looking for. In addition, so we've mentioned long-term committed relationships, but some of these may not be exclusive, especially if it's under mutual agreement. So open relationships or polyamorous relationships, right? So for example, I've worked with a client that was in a long-term relationship and married, and then they've identified with their partner that they both want to work towards an open relationship. But for them, it was really important to make sure that they could strengthen their commitment and make sure that their partnership was able to remain as the main relationship, right? The primary relationship. And so making sure that you're communicating well, if you are deciding to open up your relationship or engage in polyamory, that's perfectly fine. And so, and actually, engaging those relationships might require that you have more honest and deep communication that you would find in a casual relationship, in order to respect each other's needs. And so that's kind of one example of this kind of gray area or overlap that you may see.
Right. And then the overlap with exclusive relationships and dating. This literally looks like maybe you want a committed relationship, but ultimately you don't want something long-term. Not everyone who is dating on a more committed level ultimately wants that long-term piece. So whether that's due to personality, past history, past stressors. So again, asking the person that you're dating, the person that you're with, what does the future for us look like? We can have a committed phase right now, but does this ultimately we will be together? And of course, we don't know ultimately, right? Endings can happen at any point. So endings happen in the dating phase, they still happen in the committed phase. You might not be again interested in marriage, but still want that exclusivity. So does that look like life partner, that sort of thing? And it really, the dating process helps us determine if we want that long-term commitment. That's what is going on, but that can shift back and forth. Things like your independent needs still matter. So let's say, Brenda, you really want to move to New York and go and get your doctorate, right? Because and you'll do great, and I'm supporting you in that, but it's still very, very important. So am I doing this on my own, right? Which can look more like dating, or does this person really want to join me in that? And so that could go either way at that point with those big life decisions. So as we end today, Brenda, what are some barriers that keep us again, either in that dating phase, make us, hesitant to enter into that really serious phase?
Yeah, absolutely. So factors might include your dating experience so far. And I do want to say it's never too late to date. And then maybe attachment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe some attachment styles. So, if you feel like, when times get tough in a relationship, you tend to withdraw, or if you're maybe more of a pursuer, right? If things aren't going well, like that might impact your ability to move into a long-term committed relationship. Again, maybe personal goals. Michelle, you were talking about, right? Maybe some of these big moves or pursuit of those goals could impact that availability and ability to commit to something like a long-term relationship. And maybe also just some insecurities or sensitivities that you might have picked up through past negative relationships or trauma that could also create a barrier. So it's important to consider these, because if you find that your partner is not reciprocating that same level of commitment, it may not be personal, right? Maybe they do want to increase their level of commitment, but could struggle with overcoming some of these factors. And again, it's also important to explore the different definitions, right? People can have different definitions of what dating is or what a relationship is. And we hope that some of this information helps to kind of create maybe a guideline or a foundation for what the definitions of each are. But I'd still recommend checking in to kind of clarify what each person's expecting based on their personal definitions. In addition, also seeking some professional support from an individual or relationship counselor could be beneficial in helping you overcome some of these barriers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The number one thing, like you're saying, Brenda, don't make assumptions, right? So if something looks exclusive to you and your idea of an exclusive relationship, let's say you're going on a bunch of vacations, we must be headed down the path to marriage. And the other person's just, hey, I need a travel buddy, right? So don't make these assumptions and act if they are true. Check in with one another. We can't stress communication enough. And, there's gentler ways of checking in on these things versus me sitting you down on a Friday night. Brenda, what are we? Okay, because now you feel maybe a little bit on the spot versus, I'm looking.
I'm just going to tell her what she wants to hear.
Exactly. I don't want to do this tonight. Yeah. Everything's great. So we don't want that. But that does end our episode for today. So again, if you like what you hear, if you are looking to meet with an individual or couples therapist, with one of our therapists here at Anchor Light Therapy Collective, you can schedule a complimentary 20-minute consultation at anchorlighttherapy.com/get started. And of course, find us all over social media. We have a lot of great content for you there.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Holding Ground, where you can tune in every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m.
Great. Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks for tuning in to Holding Ground. You can hear us here every Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. on KCANW. I'm Laura Richer at Anchor Light Therapy Collective.
Find us online at anchorlighttherapy.com.
And we'll see you next week.